Hey y'all, welcome back to the Art for O.U.R channel. I've been working on resin projects now for, oh sorry, this is Dan Preece. I keep forgetting to say that because we've got a friend of mine named Thomas who's going to be joining us, and he's going to start putting out some amazing content. He's got some amazing skills, and I can't wait to see what he produces. Anyway, so this is Dan Preece. Over the last, I don't know, just before COVID hit, so early 2020, it's about 3 years, I've been messing around with wood and resin projects, trying different things. And no matter how hard I try, I always end up with a little extra resin with my projects. I always end up having to top off projects, and it's just hard to get it perfect, you know. So anyway, at one point I got this 5-gallon bucket and shoved a big log in there and a whole bunch of wood pieces and a whole bunch of cool looking bark from one of my projects and filled it to the top. And then every time I had a little extra resin, instead of just throwing it away, I just dumped it in here. And we're talking a cup here, a quart there, you know, whatever. I do really big projects, and sometimes my estimations are off, so sometimes it is quite a bit of resin, but it's taken a couple of years to fill up this bucket. And this, what we're seeing here is the very last couple of inches of resin that I needed to fill in. And for the most part, it was clear resin. I usually work in clear. And I thought I'd kept it clear the whole way through, but at some point I forgot and put a little bit of blue in there, which kind of made it fun. But anyway, so as this thing was getting filled up and nearing the top, I was thinking to myself, what in the world am I going to do with this thing? And I had about 2 or 3 different plans and designs go through my brain. And I love to carve, and I'm still learning how to do, you know, power carving, especially with resin. It's like working with soft stone, you know, you can carve it, but it's pretty hard stuff, a little harder than wood. Anyway, so I didn't want to challenge myself too much and try to make a David statue or something crazy. So as I was kicking around different ideas, I saw this design of interwoven knot. It's like a never-ending granny knot. And I thought, hey, that's pretty cool, kind of abstract. Nothing, no personal connection to it or anything, but just thought it was pretty neat. So I decided on the specific design, and I can't give anyone credit that I'm aware of. I try to look it up online through image searching, and it just comes up with a million sites that are just selling that in brass or glass or whatever. And so I don't know. I don't think anybody owns the rights to it, but if you're the artist that designed this thing first, let me know. Give you full credit. Anyway, once I saw it and started thinking about how I was going to do it, I sat there. this this thing twisted my brain in as many knots as it actually is. It kicked my butt. So I finally went from a printout of the image to this 3D model because I had to have something to look at. I just could not translate 2D to 3D in my brain. That is not in my skill set. Some people are amazing at that, and I am not. Just ask my wife when we go traveling. I usually drive, and she likes to navigate or do whatever. And if we go somewhere, I can get there fine. I'm pretty good at directions, but coming back in reverse, building a 3D model of a map in my brain that I can flip around and come in reverse, that is beyond me. My brain does not do that. So just to give you an idea of my limitations. So creating this was, I cut out so many minutes of me just turning this over and over and over, trying to make sure that I left material where I needed to be and take it out where I needed to be, and so on. And so this was a challenge for me. I drew this on this block of resin and wood twice. I didn't show that, but it took a minute for me to get the nerve up to start cutting because I just knew I was going to screw it up. And if you watch closely, I fixed this with sawdust and glue a couple of times because predicting where you're going to end up as things are intertwining was, again, a big challenge. This project would not have happened without the amazing engineers at Arbortech. I don't have a sponsorship with them or anything, but between all of the bits that they have created for their little mini grinder carvers, I was able to get this done. I ended up using four main tools here. This one's just kind of a universal carver. It's a flat disc with some carving edges on it, which I used for the majority of it. And I was buying stuff throughout this project, trying to improve on my tool selection. And at the very end, I finally bought their little disc that has two carbide tips on it. It's very much like carbide turning tools. And man, I wish I'd got that first off because it not only does it stay sharper longer, but it cuts like butter. Oh my gosh, at least for resin and the wood, it was just effortless. But unfortunately, I didn't get that to the very end of the project, but now I know. But that being said, this universal carving tip was just fine. It was great. For the bigger volume excavation carving areas, I used the graph carving disc that can go on any typical angle grinder. Um, I realized that I was making this little guy dull pretty, I mean, not really fast, but relatively fast, and I wasn't moving enough material quick enough, so you'll see me go back and forth between the big grinder and the small one for the more intricate parts. But yeah, kudos to the Arbor Tech group company. They're really on to something. I've tried the Merlin carving system, and I burned out their tool in about an hour or two. It just isn't heavy duty enough. They're on the right idea, but it's not strong enough, not for what I'm doing. And that thing would just overheat like crazy. This one is corded; it's not cordless, and I went for hours at a time without a hitch. I mean, I'll say it again: Arbortech is fantastic. They've nailed it. I can't wait to see what more they come out with. If you guys are listening, I tell you what I want is a miniature orbital sander that I can shove in little tiny areas, little nooks and crannies. You'd save me some serious carpal tunnel and sore sore hands where I have to get in there and manually sand things. You'll see me spend a lot of time with a file sander, which is great, um, but it's for the rougher stuff. It leaves a lot of grooves, and so I need that next little thing. If somebody's listening and they know it of something like that, let me know. But I need that little orbital sanding motion. That's the key. Now you'll notice I never turn on my lathe. This wasn't actually a lathe project. I've just discovered that lathes are great for holding my carving subjects. I've done a couple of carving projects, just kind of abstract things, and it's got a setting there where you can just lock it into position in any position you want, and it's just a great holding station for that. The next thing I'm going to hunt for is some really big clamps that are soft so I can hold my piece where I want it to be. I've seen little ones, but I need big ones, like with a foot wide arm or 2 foot arm that I can hold really weird big pieces in place while I work. One of the challenges with carving is that the further you get into the project, the lighter it becomes, and you end up chasing it all over the table or whatever. So one thing I tried from Arbortech, I bought all their stuff. As they say, every man is just one more tool away from greatness, right? Well, I bought their chisel, power chisel, and for this project, it wasn't super useful. I thought I was going to use it a lot, but didn't really. But I can see how it's got its place, just not for what I was doing here. I tell you what was awesome though is they have this ball gouge, and there's two sizes. There's a little guy, and then there's a big 30 millimeter one. And I made heavy use of both of them. I'm trying to find out if I can buy that little one independently. As far as I can tell, I can only see a set. I tried to reach out to them and they didn't get back to me, but for getting up underneath these little nooks and crannies, this little ball gouge was fantastic. You can loosen it and turn the little disc, the cutting part of the disc around when it gets dull, so you can get a lot of use out of it before it goes completely dull. This project was fun just because I'm in the early learning phase of learning how to power carve. Admittedly, this was probably a bigger project than I should have started out with, but every time I do something like this, I learn some valuable lessons. Sometimes the lessons will only apply to that specific design, and if I were to do it again, I'd probably nail it. But it's fun to see what different tools can do, what companies are out there that have different tools, and to employ them in different ways. It's always a challenge to see what you can do, what can be done. If I had to do this by hand, it never would have happened. That's all I know. This is a lot of work. If you're new to this channel, the majority of our proceeds, and I should say all of the proceeds, anything meaningful goes to through Art for O.U.R, which is a fundraising company we started, nonprofit for Operation Underground Railroad. Um, Artists of all kinds, of every medium you can imagine, big and small, have donated projects and items to be sold to raise money for Operation Underground Railroad. O.U.R is an amazing organization that helps fight child trafficking, human trafficking around the world. Um, Unfortunately, it's a disgusting industry that's out there that's a massive industry, and um, I got the itch to do some charity work about the time COVID started, before COVID started, and I was thinking, what can we do? How can I support something that really needs a lot of attention, and what's a really important, pressing thing, for, at least for the individuals involved in this. And this is what I came up with. I have a friend named Jack Saunders who had been doing it for years and supporting them for years, and I followed his lead, and we started doing other things. Anyway, we'd love to have your support at Art for O.U.R. If you're an artist, come donate something. If you know an artist, tell them what we're doing. I know the starving artist is a real thing, and so if there are people out there that say, well, I can't donate everything, but I could donate some, you can take some of the profit home to pay for your overhead and time, but we ask that at least 60% of the profit go to O.U.R. For me, 100% goes. As always, this project will be sold at auction at Art for O.U.R. If you look at under current auctions, current live auctions, you'll see this piece for auction for the next 2-3 weeks, from the day this video is posted. We have other artists that we're hosting on there as well. If it doesn't sell, it'll be on the website itself, just under the catalog under my name. Anyway, I can't think of a better cause. A lot of innocent people out there, they get stuck in these trafficking. It's basically modern day slavery situations, and it's never going to stop. I know that, but doesn't mean we can't fight it, right? Huge thank you to Total Boat for their continuing sponsorship of this channel. They provide several gallons of resin a month, which is not cheap, and I recognize that and just want to show my appreciation to them. So go support Total Boat. They've contributed thousands and thousands of dollars of resin to what we're doing. Also, a special thank you to my team at Art for O.U.R. Got Nikki, Susie, and Jennifer. They all do different things, help this thing grow and help it run. It wouldn't exist if it wasn't for them. I don't have the time and energy to keep things running, and they do, and they're awesome at it with promotions and the details of handling transactions and things that come through the website. So thank you very much. This moment right here was huge. If you're not a carver, somebody who makes crafts, you won't understand, but you get to a point where you finally get a breakthrough. You can finally see through to the other side, and the 3D model finally comes together, and from that moment on, it's just fine tuning. And this was like midnight one night, and I couldn't stop. I was like, oh my gosh, I can finally see through this. We're making this happen. It was a big moment in the life of a nerd in his garage. One thing that surprised me with this, I've got big chunks of bark in here and twigs and branches. There's no rhyme or reason. I was going for chaos and whatever happens, right? One thing I was really surprised about is how strong it is. It's heavy and it's strong. I thought it would be just weak and I'd be breaking it all the time, especially when I'm wedging it in my lathe here and put pressure on either side. I thought for sure I'd just snap this thing. I did have one crack form, but it wasn't a surprise at all because there was one place where it was pure bark right through it, and it was just a weak spot. In fact, you can see me repairing it right there with some super glue, and once I glued it up, it was fine. That really thick that really thin CA glue is just my best friend. It soaks into really porous areas that are weak, whatever project I'm working on, and it hardens quickly, especially when using the accelerant. But yeah, that was the only structural problem I had. The other thing that was a real challenge with this project was making the curves appear smooth and not a sharp turn. I don't know if I completely accomplished that. There just wasn't as much space in here as I needed. There was just barely enough space from the size of my tools and the amount of material I had, the width of the bucket, So there's still some flat sides, but I think in the end I got it about 90% of the way I wanted it to look. It was kind of smooth. Anyway, the whole time I was making this, I kept thinking, this thing looks like a boa constrictor. So I served a mission for my church in Brazil when I was 19 up to when I was 21. And I wasn't in the Amazon, but I was really close. And I remember one day, me and my companion were walking through this tiny town we were working in, and there was this big, I don't know what I call it, not a riot, but people were running all over the place, and we kind of got there late. We didn't know what was happening, and this uproar kind of died down, and people went back to their houses. And I guess we ran into somebody, and they said, "Hey, you missed it. We just pulled a massive python out of the river," or boa constrictor. So I didn't actually get to see it, but I did see a lot of crazy animals there. Ants as big as your thumb. I caught a grasshopper once as big as my hand. It was just huge. An iguana once was sitting there on the side of the road stuck in some weeds. I could tell we were near the jungle. It was kind of a cool place to live. There was one day we had what's called a preparation day or a day off, and when you're a missionary, and we went hiking one day up in the mountains, and it wasn't again super thick jungle, but it was it was kind of a forest, and we saw a troop of monkeys go swinging through the trees, and they were so fast. They were like the size of raccoons. They weren't very big, but they were so fast we barely saw them. So it was quite an adventure to live there. The animals were something else. We came home one night after working, and I flipped the lights on in our kitchen, and the entire room was moving. And I realized that it was ants just everywhere, millions and millions of ants. And this huge ant colony was either out scouting for stuff or on the move, but they were moving by way of my kitchen. And it was crazy. Like, we had silverware, forks and spoons on our rack that we had washed, and they were drying, and the whole thing was just moving. It was like this crazy covering of living things. But I don't know how long they'd been there, but they disappeared pretty quick and never came back. It was just one of those crazy things. Anyway, thank you so much for your support. You guys are amazing. We hit 30,000 subscribers for the channel this month, which is mind-blowing. I'm so grateful for your support. Every month we're able to raise, a couple $1,000 through selling this stuff and through the viewership and that. So I can't tell you thank you enough for helping me realize my dream of raising a lot of money to help kids that are in trouble out there. So, if you're a YouTube channel owner and you do this kind of work, we would love nothing more than to host one of your projects on our channel. All goes to a good cause. If you want to join me in making content, I would love it. If you're making high quality stuff and you like to film it, jump on in. The water's warm. The more the merrier. You guys have a great one. I'll be seeing you on the flip side of the next project. Take care.